Right then, let's get into the Champions League draw. Just a quick run through of the last 16. Borussia Dortmund take on Lille. Real Madrid face Atletico Madrid. Tasty one,
That's
that.
good.
Bayern Munich take on Bayer Leverkusen in an all-German affair. Arsenal will take on PSV Eindhoven. Feyenoord will meet Inter Milan. Paris Saint-Germain take on Liverpool.
That's
and
a good
Benfica
tie.
Face Barcelona. There's some great ties here.
Oh, like again.
Thought you said you hated the Champions League, Kweku.
No, because
He doesn't do it for him, Jeremy.
I've been so disconnected from the Champions League because my team's not in it. But I'm going through the ties right now. Even Benfica Barcelona is a good tie. Bayern Munich Leverkusen, good tie. Real Madrid versus Atletico.
About 10 minutes ago, you said, "Wake me up when the games come."
Yeah,
I think that's what you said.
I know. I'm just looking at them now. It's tasty. When you look at them on a piece of paper, it's like, oh, they're good ties. PSG versus Liverpool is not a guarantee, man. That's not a guarantee for Liverpool. They are. I think that they would have preferred to have anybody else in a young PSG team they're playing good football, and it's a PSG that are different to PSGs of yesteryear, where there's that pressure they have to win the Champions League. They've got a very young team that are cohesive and they're a unit, and I think Liverpool, that'll be a tough tie for them.
I think so too. I think that when you look at PSG nowadays, you see a team. And I saw them at the Emirates live earlier this season, and I didn't think they were great on that particular occasion, but just sort of following them over the course of the season and watching a few of their games here and there, you can see, as I say, a team. You can see a group that are not focused on feeding any one individual like it might have been a few years ago. There isn't an Mbappe anymore, as great as he is, and he obviously makes the team better.
Yeah,
I think sometimes having that bit of unpredictability is key. I really like Bradley Barcola. I think he's a fantastic player, really exciting talent. And Ousmane Dembele, he looks like he's just refound the magic that sort of shot him up to prominence in the first place. I
remember when I think England played against France in a friendly at Wembley when Dembele and Mbappe were still teenagers, and I promise you, I saw them both play and I said, Dembele's better. Dembele's a better natural footballer. Both-footed, can do a lot more. Obviously, his career's been affected and hampered by injuries, moves that haven't really worked out, but he seems to have found a home at PSG without Mbappe being that looming shadow there. And against Man City in that tie, he looked absolutely electric when he came on. So I think Liverpool got a tough out there, but going back to Anfield is difficult for any team in Europe, and we saw Liverpool play against Real Madrid, who I think a lot of people's favourites with competition, and dismantled them at Anfield earlier on the season. Of course, Real Madrid later on in the season is a different prospect, but I think Liverpool get through, but that'll be a tough tie.
It will indeed. PSV against Arsenal, is that a given for you?
Yeah.
Do you think so? Even with Arsenal's injury problems? Because I said this earlier and I got a lot of stick for it.
Yeah, no, it's a given for Arsenal. Arsenal benefited last season from being in the Champions League and understanding what knockout football entails, and obviously that, I would say, heartbreaker going out against Bayern Munich, but I don't think Arsenal did enough to go through in that tie. But making it through against Porto, who again we would have said it was a given, but there's nothing given to you in the Champions League. You have to go out there and do it, and the fact that Arsenal got through that tie, that was very, very close and tight, that experience that those players have got when it comes around to playing against PSV in the Champions League in the round of 16, I think Arsenal will dismantle them.
I think Aston Villa are on their way through to the quarterfinals. Club Brugge, they get the away game out of the way first as well. That feels like it's worked out really, really well for Unai Emery.
Rocking at Villa Park. It's going to be
Dan Bardell will be buzzing, won't he?
You will be absolutely buzzing. But yeah, they go through. It's a nice draw for Villa. And there's been some criticism for Villa recently in terms of, it seems like they're throwing all their eggs in the Champions League basket. You are a man that knows Unai Emery well in terms of managing your football club, and he does tend to do that when it comes to European competitions, but I can understand it. Champions League football back at Villa Park for the first time in the iteration of the Champions League ever. Obviously they won the European Cup in the 80s, but I understand why it's all in for the Champions League, because they've got a great chance of progressing deep into this competition.
I agree with that, but I also think that if Aston Villa, and listen, as an Aston Villa fan, you'd be buzzing, right? You're turning up at Villa Park, Champions League night, under the lights, all those cliches. It's what it's all about, right? But if Villa don't make the Champions League next season, then all of that work and all of that progress, in my view, comes unstuck, and it's almost undone.
Really?
You have to establish yourself as a Champions League club for the next few years if you really want to kick on and compete at the very highest level. I honestly believe that. And so if I were Unai Emery, I would, obviously, you don't want to deprioritise. I don't think at this stage in the season you should deprioritise any of them. I think you've got to be all in on both. But I think if they were to get to the quarterfinals, let's say, and then meet Liverpool or PSG, get knocked out, okay, great, they got to the Champions League quarterfinal. But if they're not in the Champions League next season, then where do they go from there? Are they starting again? For me, it's really important that they maintain that status.
I understand that. Their jobs are made tougher as well. A lot's been made about Aston Villa's Premier League results after they play in the Champions League, which is atrocious. And the fact they let John Duran go in January means that they can't rotate in a position where they probably need to rotate. Ollie Watkins does a lot of work for the team, not just on the ball, but off the ball as well. And so they have got ostensibly a weaker squad. I know they've brought in players on loan, but in terms of actual quality, I think they'll miss John Duran. But we'll see how they get on. They'll beat Club Brugge and then PSG or Liverpool. Let's see how they go. But we saw them against Liverpool in the league midweek, and they looked all right. I think they fancied their chances in that against another Premier League side. Just
conscious of time, we've got to talk about the Europa League ties as well. But just very, very quickly, Real Madrid versus Atletico is the one that jumps out, isn't it? Is that a given? Because people are talking about Real Madrid as having already progressed. But if there's one manager, if there's one team that could put the kind of spanner in the works and stifle even the great Kylian Mbappe, Vinicius Jr., etc., it feels like it's Diego Simeone.
You think so, but you look at Simeone and his resume is absolutely incredible in terms of what he's done at Atletico. He's won a couple of La Ligas, got to a couple of Champions League finals. Who did he lose a Champions League finals to, though? Real Madrid.
Fair.
When it comes to European competitions, Atletico, they would have prayed to draw anybody else apart from Real Madrid. I think that it won't be easy for Real Madrid, but they make it through. Their top players are now starting to purr.
They are indeed. Let's move on to the Europa League. Some of the standout ties. Rangers take on Jose Mourinho's Fenerbahce. Tottenham take on AZ Alkmaar. Now, Tottenham, I think, have got the advantage of having the second leg at home. But I saw a bit of AZ Alkmaar against Galatasaray. Don't ask me how I ended up watching that, but I did. And AZ look really good.
Yeah.
And they've got ex-Spurs man Troy Parrott up front as well, who's having a great time over there. Is this a potential banana skin for Big Andrew's men?
I haven't seen enough of AZ to really give a definitive opinion on how good they are. But if you're Spurs, you take that. You take that tie and you expect to progress. If they go out to AZ Alkmaar, I think that Andrew loses job in short order.
He's always win things in my second year.
Because he wouldn't have won something in his second year if they go out of the Europa League.
He'd be failing to meet his own standards.
His own standards. Yeah. And I know it's off topic, but we talked about Enzo Maresca kind of downplaying things and did the opposite of that. And now he has to go out and win something in his second year. Forget about the league. The league is done. Like, Spurs aren't going to finish it. What's the difference between finishing 10th and finishing 16th.
Daniel
17th.
Levy will probably be able to tell you the numbers.
Yeah, but for us, it's nothing. It's everything towards the Europa League, and I think they should progress against AZ.
I talk about that tie being one that's in the balance. I'll tell you what's not in the balance. Real Sociedad against Manchester United. They wipe the floor with Manchester United, in my opinion. Yep.
I don't think so. I don't think so. Manchester United have shown us that despite how poor they've been, not just this season, but for the last couple of seasons, they are a cup team. They are a cup team, and they've got the ability to pull out results when you least expect it. When you think about 2 years ago, Eric Ten Hag got to an FA Cup final, which they lost against Man City. They won the League Cup.
Man United are back.
They're definitely not back. But last season, finished 8th in the Premier League. Going into the FA Cup final against Man City, who had already won the Premier League, we thought it was a given. They not just beat Man City, they convincingly beat Man City in the FA Cup final. This is a weird United team that find ways to progress in cup competitions. In the FA Cup, progress when they shouldn't have against Leicester. In the Europa League, I think they're going to find a way to get through against Sociedad as well.
But here's the problem. They've got worse.
They have.
They've got worse than they were last season.
They have.
So all of that was valid, absolutely, right? But they've got worse.
Yeah.
And their squad is weaker. It is weaker than it was previously. They went into that transfer window, and who did they bring in? Dorgu. And they were saying, we're going to try and do this, try and do that. Actually, they've ended up worse off. They've lost Marcus Rashford. I think they've lost Lisandro Martinez for a long period of time.
Yeah.
They've lost Anthony. They've let him go out and he's pulling up trees.
Which is
in
crazy.
Spain. I don't know what's going on there. But it just shows you that they've got worse.
Yeah, they have, but I think they find a way to get through this tie. The one I'm looking at, Fenerbahce versus Rangers. That is mouth-watering.
Tasty.
That will be a good time. It's weird because I was looking at the Europa League when it was the group phase, and I was going through teams, and I was like, it's not as strong as it has been in previous years. But when you look at this knockout phase now, there's a couple of tasty ties there, and if the teams we expect to progress, then the quarterfinals will be very, very good.
I know you don't like all the changes being made to the modern game, and especially the European competitions, but do you like the fact that Champions League teams don't drop into this now?
Yeah, because it devalues the Europa League. I think it did devalue the Europa League, and I saw it firsthand. Whenever Chelsea used to drop into Europa League, we'd win it, and it's like, I just don't know if that should be the case. I feel like you qualify for the competition you qualify for. You don't just drop into another competition because you've done poorly in the original one. I think that this way, or this format, just pays a lot more respect to the Europa League, and teams can actually focus and game plan for that competition rather than hoping that bigger teams don't drop into their competition.
Yeah, if you've been away to Cyprus in July to play a qualifying round game, and then the Champions League team drops down and wipes the floor with you, it becomes a bit frustrating, doesn't it? For sure.